Whether you've won or lost in week 6, today is a chance to improve your fantasy football team with the waiver wire. Here are some key injuries that we're monitoring that will impact the waiver wire, right? Puka Nacua came back into the game, obviously after suffering that ankle injury in the second quarter, but didn't get another target. The Rams really didn't need to throw the ball though, so we'll have to monitor that. Garrett Wilson, it was originally ruled a hip, then they changed it to a knee injury, and we're waiting on MRIs at this point. Emeka Egbuka. So the reports came out. He didn't come back into the game after that hamstring injury, but later on, reports are coming out that they don't believe the injury is too serious, and MRI will determine whether he misses time. I would personally be surprised if a player who leaves a game with a hamstring injury doesn't miss time. Far more times than not, that player does miss time, but let's stay tuned to the news. And that will impact the waiver wire as well. Marvin Harrison Jr., concussion, he won't come back this week, right? He'll be out at least a week. Amari DiMercado is going to miss some time. David Njoku, Calvin Ridley is going to miss some time. And Miles Sanders is season ending. Okay, if you're in a smaller league, all of these names on your screen should be rostered. Definitely still Woody Marks. Yes, still Woody Marks coming off the bye week. He should be rostered, so we're not going to waste our time diving through those names. All right, my #1 pickup, no doubt about it, if for whatever reason he's available in your league, is going to be Kamani Vidal. Now, if you want me to go deeper into the waiver wire, just give me a second, but he's available in 73% of ESPN and Yahoo leagues, about 55% of sleeper leagues. But now what's funny about this pickup is that before the game began, Mike Garafolo tweeted out that Chargers running back Hassan Haskins was expected to be the lead back. Well, that was complete opposite of the truth, right? Here in this game versus the Dolphins, Kamani Vidal had 43 snaps compared to 20 for Hassan Haskins. If you look at just purely opportunities, 22 opportunities for Vidal to just 7 for Hassan Haskins. I mean, Hassan Haskins had 6 opportunities just last week, so his role didn't really even change that much. Vidal, no doubt about it, took over the Marion Hampton role. He ended up, turning those opportunities into almost 23 PPR points, got into the end zone as well through the air, was incredibly efficient on the ground, 6.9 yards per carry. So if he's somehow out there, he will be the starter for the Chargers until Marion Hampton comes back. And before this week, we didn't think it was going to be any longer than 4 weeks for Marion Hampton, but now the reports are he is going to miss more than 4 weeks. And if you actually look at the schedule for the Chargers, well, 4 weeks for Marion Hampton would be after Tennessee. But if he's going to miss more than 4 weeks, in week 10 they have Pittsburgh, and week 11 Jacksonville, and then a bye week. So you might not see a Marion Hampton until week 13 versus the Raiders. So there's a chance here that Kamani Vidal is starting for your fantasy team for 5-6 weeks of the season. That is very, very valuable. So if he's out there and available, he should be rostered. At #2, now this player is probably more widely available. His name is Bam Knight. Or Zonovan, depending on your platform, right? Only rostered in 1% of ESPN and Yahoo leagues. Report came out before the day from Schefter that Bam Knight would start ahead of Michael Carter. Now, that actually wasn't really true. If you actually watched that game, you would know Michael Carter actually started for the Cardinals. But what ended up happening is Amari DiMercado went down with an ankle injury, and then after the injury for DiMercado, Michael Carter switched to DiMercado's role, and Bam Knight took Michael Carter's role as the early down back. So you can see in this game, he played the vast majority of the snaps, had 11 carries to 9 for Michael Carter, but Michael Carter was more involved in the air. So that's what I mean by saying they kind of swapped roles. You can see Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight here in that darker green, 37 plays, most of the early down work, all of the goal line work, 4 out of 5 short yardage scenarios he was out there on the field. So it looks like Bam Knight going forward is going to be, the guy when we talk about first and second down, goal line opportunities. And that's definitely the most valuable role. He had 12.4 fantasy points here. Now, let's be honest, this backfield is not that valuable. It's going to be completely split between Michael Carter and Bam Knight. But for those of you out there that are just completely desperate to find a starting running back, I'm willing to spend about 15 to 25% of my fab just to put a guy in our lineups. I know there are so many injuries, obviously with the bye weeks coming up as well. It's really difficult to field a roster right now. Okay, at 3A, this is all dependent on how serious Puka Nacua's ankle injury is. You can see, according to Mike Garofalo, Sean McVay says Puka Nacua has an ankle injury, doesn't know at this point if he will be ready for next Sunday in London against the Jags. And I don't know if like the game being in London is going to play a part here because they're going to have to travel overseas. The care might not be the exact same as him being at home in LA. But if Puka Nacua were to miss a week, and I think there's a chance, then Jordan Whittington is a legit startable flex for those of you who are going to be missing out on Puka Nacua. Now, you look at last year in 2024, Puka Nacua missed some time early in the season. Weeks 4 and weeks 5, Jordan Whittington had 9 targets per game. He had a game over 12 PPR points, a game over almost 16 PPR points, 89 receiving yards. Again, those were weeks where Puka Nacua was not healthy and not available. So again, I'm only ranking Jordan Whittington this high if Puka Nacua misses time, simply because I do believe he's a startable name straight off the waiver wire, and that's difficult to find. I will put about 1 to 7% of my fab because he's not a long-term option, but he could save your week this week in particular. Okay, at 3B, let's go to all of the Buccaneer wide receivers because let's be real, if Emeka Egbuka were to miss time, then it would be kind of a split backfield, but a split wide receiver core. Emeka Egbuka, like we said earlier, the injury is not considered to be too serious, but they are still waiting on MRI results. But my concern and why I can't tell you to confidently pick up one particular name is because Baker is probably going to spread the field out between all these guys, including Cade Otton. On Sunday, without Emeka Egbuka being healthy, Cade Otton actually led the way with 6 targets. And as far as the wide receiver targets, Tez had 2, Cameron Johnson had 4, and Sterling Shepard had 3. Now, thankfully, Tez Johnson and Cameron Johnson both got into the end zone, and Sterling Shepard had a big play. But you can't count on that type of efficiency each and every week from these guys. So if I had to bet on one name, it's probably Sterling Shepard. You could probably spot start him. Tez Johnson's a really fun young rookie, but I would be very cautious. Now, beyond this point at the waiver wire, there's a ton of, what do you need? So let's go position by position. We'll go tight end, running back, wide receiver, quarterback. You guys ready? And then we'll go defense at the end. So do you need a tight end? Well, then I would probably suggest to go out and get Oronde Gadsden, who, is his route participation each and every week is growing from 28% in week 3 to 50, 54, and then this week, 82% route participation. Obviously, no Quentin Johnston. However, Will Disley was back for week 6 in this game. So that's a very encouraging sign when you're thinking about, okay, there's a lot of veterans there in the tight end room. How do they want to utilize a name like Oronde Gadsden, whose dad had a bunch of success in the league? He actually led or tied, I guess, Ladd McConkey for first in target share amongst all Chargers here in week number 6. But it's really exciting when a young rookie gets 8 targets, catches 7 of them for 69 yards. I don't think we can just, laugh that off. Keeping in mind, in week 3, he already had a game with 7 targets, caught 5 of them for 46 yards. So he's now had career highs this game in targets, receptions, receiving yards. If he's just a rookie, how could his role grow over the course of the year? That's very enticing to me. We've got other names like Harold Fannin, who did step in this game, had his career high in targets with 10, caught 7 of those for 81 yards. David Njoku dealing with an injury. I think Fannin is probably a name that you could probably start this week with a lot of confidence. Cade Otton, obviously, if Emeka Egbuka is going to miss some time and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans aren't available, then Cade Otton's going to be an actually very, very good start. Last week, 6 targets, caught 5 of them for 51 yards. But this week, they go to Detroit. And you better bet that Tampa Bay is going to have to put up some points against the Detroit Lions at home. So Cade Otton could be an important part of that offense. Evan Ingram, you don't spend a bunch of fab the lower I go down on this list, but he's starting to get more and more involved. 6 or more targets in the last 3 games and some, decent performances. Bo Nix had some kind words to say about him. I think they want to get him more and more involved. Isaiah Likely is more of a stash at this point. Obviously, they're going on bye, so you might not be able to prioritize him right now. But when he comes back, could Mark Andrews be traded in the bye week? It's possible, right? This team is 1-5. They're struggling, and they obviously love Isaiah Likely in the future. Look, we're going to get into running back, wide receiver, and quarterback. But just first, news is constantly changing, guys. If you want to get my latest up-to-date rankings, both weekly and rest of season, then become a season pass member with the promo code LAND. You can check that out in the description. It's about $3.30 per week for the rest of the season. You get access to the rankings. You get access to the entire Flock site, like the trade calculator, and you get access to some vouchers to ask me questions on our live streams. Okay, let's jump into the running back position. Tajay Spears, all these guys I'm willing to spend about 1 to 5% of my fab. If Tajay Spears is, for whatever reason, still available on your waiver wire, he's definitely worth stashing at this point. We heard last week from the coaching staff that they want to get him more involved. And then in this game, he actually led the running back room in snaps and routes run and targets. Obviously, Tony Pollard still had more work on the ground, but if we're going to see this type of workload each and every week where Tajay Spears is more used when the Titans are down, think about the game script. The Titans are probably going to be down in most games. So it didn't turn into anything massive, but if he gets 5 targets per game, that's a startable flex in a desperate situation. We could also talk about Kenneth Gainwell, who in this game, he didn't have the same workload, obviously, when Jaylen Warren was out, but we are starting to see them kind of split that backfield a little bit more. You can see this week in particular, Jaylen Warren had 13 total touches, 11 on the ground, while Kenneth Gainwell had 12 total touches, and 6 of those coming through the air. So kind of the same thing as Tajay Spears. Obviously, targets are more valuable than carries in fantasy football, especially if you're in any PPR or half PPR formats. Let's quickly talk about Jaden Blue. Miles Sanders out for the year. So Jaden Blue, if anything were to happen to Javonte Williams, would be a very important back. And same idea with Isaiah Davis, with Braylon Allen being out 8 to 12 weeks. If anything were to happen to Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis would become a very valuable running back. Okay, let's move on to the wide receiver position. Kendrick Bourne would be at the top of this list, anywhere from 0 to 7% of my fab. I imagine he's rostered in most of your leagues. Back-to-back weeks with 142 receiving yards. Quite funny how that works. But my concern is Juwan Jennings will get healthier. At some point, we will see Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall, George Kittle, and we're not sure how long Mac Jones will start. So you have to question what sort of chemistry Kendrick Bourne would have with a different quarterback like Brock Purdy. But obviously, beggars can't be choosers, right? Jalen Coker, who practiced all last week but didn't play, I would anticipate him playing this next week. I think he's a great stash. I'm not going to be too high on Kayshon Boutte this week. I know he comes out there, has 5 catches, 93 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But after you picked him up after week 1, you didn't have a single game over 9 PPR points, barely involved. So I just don't know what's the truth at this point, and I don't want to waste fab. So he's a free ad, but anything beyond that, no thank you. Zay Jones is a great 1-week play if we get no Kyler Murray again, because obviously, we know Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to play with the concussion. They have other injuries to this wide receiver room. So clearly, he has the most chemistry with Jacoby Brissett. Jaden Higgins is a great stash coming off the bye week. If they have intentions to use him more in this offense, that probably will happen after the bye so they can scheme it up. But in week 5, before their bye, he played a career high snap percentage, career high targets, and tied his career high in receiving yards. So definitely worth looking at. Alec Ayomanor with the Calvin Ridley injury is definitely worth a stash in deeper leagues. Demario Douglas, I think it's fool's gold to roster him personally. You're not going to have him down the field, this kind of weapon each and every week. So I would more lean towards passing on him if he's available. Okay, let's go to quarterback streamers for week number 7. Jared Goff faces the Bucs. That's the 8th best matchup for your quarterback. And more importantly, I just don't see a scenario in which the Bucs and the Lions aren't both able to put up big-time points. Aaron Rodgers, if you're in a desperate situation here, he faces the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football. The Bengals give up the 4th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. He had 17.5 points versus the Browns last week. Looked pretty good. Jackson Dart, he's actually my favorite long-term play here if you need answer at quarterback, but the issue is I hate the matchup versus the Denver Broncos. They are a bottom 5 matchup for your quarterback. And then Spencer Rattler, if you're really digging in the bottom of the barrel, in week number 7, he faces the Chicago Bears. Chicago is one of the best matchups for your fantasy quarterbacks. Now, we're going to jump into fantasy defenses here for week 7, but just before I do that, week 7 FastDraft Quick 6 Super Slam contest, it just opened. All you got to do is choose 6 non-quarterbacks that you like for week 7. For example, you see me, I got Rashee Rice in my lineup. That's right, coming off the suspension. We're putting him right into our DFS lineup against the Las Vegas Raiders. If you've never played before, download the FastDraft app, use my promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50, and then you'll get my week 7 rankings completely free. Okay, to end the video, we've got week 7 defensive streamers. If any of these defenses are out there, they're great options. The Steelers face the Bengals. the Patriots at the Titans, the Chiefs versus the Raiders, the Eagles at the Vikings, and the Broncos versus the Giants. Obviously, the first name I mentioned in all those matchups are the defenses that I'm looking to chase. And good news, all of those defenses are in top 7 matchups for fantasy defenses this week. So definitely names that you should go out there and target. But guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button and show some love. Subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Nothing but love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app, where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.